Hello once again to the news today at 9, the program. But we were first right at the top today, want to break a big story. Less than 12 hours to go before Maharashtra goes to the elections, and there has been high drama. The Shiv Sena has now done a U-turn after talking about giving a Chaiwala jibe at Narendra Modi. That's right. A short while ago, Uddhav Thackeray's public relations team has now tried to distance itself from an interview that he gave to party mouthpiece earlier today, saying that if people can vote in a tea vendor as the Prime Minister, then a Thackeray can surely be the Chief Minister of Maharashtra. The copy of the Sena Chief's interview, which will be published tomorrow in the Saamana, was circulated this evening in the media. The Shiv Sena now has made an amendment, replaced the word Chaiwala with Aam Aadmi or the common man. Clearly, the Shiv Sena wary of the negative impact that this Chaiwala jibe will have against Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let me go straight to our correspondent there. Sahil Joshi is joining me from Mumbai to get the very latest on that. Sahil, I have with me these papers. This is the interview which has been done by Uddhav Thackeray, given by Uddhav Thackeray to the Sena mouthpiece, where he has specifically said, if a Chaiwala can become the Prime Minister, why can I not become the Chief Minister? Clearly, this remark has forced the Shiv Sena now to backtrack, fearing the backlash. What exactly has the Shiv Sena now said?
It's pretty surprising, Rajdeep, because the interview, Uddhav Thackeray's interview was not taken by any ordinary Saamana reporter, but it was taken by Sanjay Raut himself. He is a member of Parliament of Shiv Sena and also has been looking after Saamana as an executive editor. In the first draft of the interview, which was circulated to the media, that Uddhav Thackeray had clearly said that he wants to become the Chief Minister. He will take the responsibility, and he has taken a jibe at Narendra Modi, saying that if the people can vote a Chaiwala to become Prime Minister, then why not Thackeray? I mean, Thackeray will not shy away from taking the responsibility. But as soon as the media started running that interview, the details of that interview, right, we get a call from Saamana, and we were told that there is a new draft which has been sent, and the new draft clearly mentions the Chaiwala word is vanished, and the new word instead of Chaiwala is Aam Aadmi. So
what does Sanjay Raut have to say? He is an MP who has taken this interview of Uddhav Thackeray. We have the copy of the interview which clearly says, Sahil, that he used the word Chaiwala. This was the word that Mani Shankar Iyer used in the general election campaign. Congress suffered a backlash. Is the Shiv Sena now fearing a similar backlash?
Yeah, I mean, clearly they understood that the reactions from the people, because tomorrow the Maharashtra will be voting, and the reactions from the people will not be so good. The tide might turn against them, because Shiv Sena is really hoping that in Mumbai and Konkan they will do very well. They have raked up the sentimental issues, and by calling Narendra Modi Chaiwala, they will lose that sympathy. So by understanding this particular aspect, it clearly looks like that the orders were given to the Saamana, right, especially Sanjay Raut, to come up with a new draft. And the new draft, as we are showing to our viewers, that new draft doesn't carry Chaiwala word in the interview.
So it has been replaced by the word Aam Aadmi. Clearly just 12 hours to go for those polls, and the Shiv Sena has been embarrassed and red-faced by that interview. Sahil Joshi, Mumbai Bureau Chief, joining us with the very latest on that story. Let's then turn to Maharashtra itself, because India's wealthiest state goes to the polls tomorrow. Not surprisingly then, the elections have seen more crorepati candidates here than any other. An Association for Democratic Reforms, ADR report now also shows how the assets of sitting MLAs have increased multiple times in the last 5 years. Money, in fact, is the one factor that unites all parties in Maharashtra. The big question, will it influence voters too? Amruta Shedge now reports.
It's business as usual in Maharashtra polls. Money power, muscle power on naked display. More than 15 crore cash seized in Maharashtra in the run-up to these assembly polls. But many observers believe this is only the tip of the money mountain. While India battled the peaking prices crisis, many of our leaders were actually laughing all the way to the bank. And within the last 5 years, as this report by the Association of Democratic Reforms shows. The personal wealth of 216 netas recontesting polls in Maharashtra has gone up on an average by over 8 crore rupees. Assets that stood at about 5 crores in 2009 surged by over 164% to over 13 crore rupees. Over the last 5 years, 36 Shiv Sena MLAs saw an average assets jump of 172%. 51 NCP MLAs enjoyed a 176% increase in average assets, while 62 recontesting MLAs of the Congress saw their assets climb by 184%. The second highest jump was recorded by 44 recontestants from the BJP, who saw a 198% jump in their assets. And right at the top, 8 MLAs from MNS who saw their wealth grow by 294%. Several cases have been reported in this election of money power being used to woo the voters. A case was registered against NCP leader and Deputy Chief Minister Ajit Pawar after a seizure of 4.85 lakh rupees from a car in Parbhani. In Nagpur, cops seized 10 lakh rupees from a man allegedly headed for Rahul Gandhi's rally in Ramte. And even the Prime Minister Narendra Modi has shared stage with gangster Chota Rajan's brother Deepak Nikhalje, a candidate from the RPI and ally of the BJP. Money and a bit of muscle. Maharashtra is a mirror perhaps of how winnability is all that matters in election time. With Amrita Shedge in Mumbai, Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
Okay, let's take that money issue a little forward. Let's look at who are the big richie riches of Maharashtra and how their wealth has increased. Take a look at asset increase, as we've been saying, from 2009 to 14. Mangal Prabhat Lodha, big builder of Mumbai, he's grown from 68.6 crores to 198.6 crores. One of the biggest builders of the BJP from Malabar Hill. Another sitting MLA. Let's take a look at the others who we have in our list, who's Suresh Jain. He's in jail for the last 24 months, but that hasn't stopped his assets from growing. 82.82 crores in 2009, now to 182 crores. He's been in jail for the last 2 years. He's still contesting the elections on a Sena ticket. Ramesh Thakur from Kandivali East, he's grown from 2009 to 82.2 crores to 81.6 crores in 2014. Again linked to the construction industry. Take a look at another name, Narayan Rane, the Revenue Minister of Maharashtra. His assets, as per his affidavit, 14.3 crores. Now they are 72.35 crores. Remember, this is only the assets on paper. Actually, they could be worth much more. Take a look at Ajit Pawar. Many believe one of the richest politicians of Maharashtra. 2009, 10.78 crores. Now he declares his assets at 38.8 crores. The big question that we are raising, is money power now dominating elections in a state like Maharashtra? That's the first big question that we are raising today. And that's the question that I'm going to pose to all my panelists right at the top to try and get a sense from them as to what role is money power going to play come election time tomorrow. Take a look at who's joining us at the moment. I'm joined by Professor Tarlochan Shastri. He's the founder and trustee of Association for Democratic Reforms that has brought out this big report on assets. YP Singh, former IPS officer, is joining me. Ashish Shelar, president of the Mumbai BJP, and Sanjay Jha, national spokesperson of the Congress. Appreciate all of you joining us right at the top here on our big question. The first question to you, Mr. Shelar, if there is one issue that unites Congress and BJP in Maharashtra, it is money power. By my list, Congress has 222 crore-patis, BJP has 210 crore-patis. 77% of Congress candidates crore-patis, 81% of BJP candidates. Would you agree it is necessary to be a crore-pati to become an MLA today in Maharashtra? You cannot win an election unless you are a crore-pati, often several times over.
No, let me first clarify that it is not necessity for the candidates to be the crore-pati. That is a clear-cut thinking of Bharatiya Janata Party. Bharatiya Janata Party never gives the tickets on the assets and the value of a person. We have our own standard ratio by which we give the tickets. So there is nothing to do with crore-pati or non-crore-pati candidates, number one. Number two, BJP is the only party which has always promotes that our workers, leaders and everybody should do their profession or business first, along with the politics. So obviously those who are doing their professional activities or business activities,
Sir, there is nothing
they are
wrong in being a,
supposed to grow
Mr. Shelar, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong in being a crorepati, but the fact is, and even the BJP has in its list people like Anil Gote, who's contesting from Jalgaon, who was arrested and convicted in the Telgi stamp case. So criminal candidates exist. I'm not saying that you cannot be a crorepati in this country. Nothing wrong in being a crorepati. I am asking you, do you concede that today to be a crorepati is almost a necessary condition in a state like Maharashtra to win an election?
See, let me clarify that as far as criminal candidates are concerned, we are the last in the entire all other parties that we have filled up any criminal candidates. So I deny this. Number two, my personal opinion is very frank that if, apart from any party, if the candidates are doing their profession and business rightfully and they have their own assets and business, then there are always a less chance for them to get corrupt after getting elected because their own sources of income is strong enough.
That's an interesting point. Mr. Shelar, you're making an interesting point. You're saying the wealthier a candidate is, the less chance of him being corrupt. If he is wealthy by his profession, less chance of him being corrupt. You know, Sanjay Jha, what is interesting is here a number of your candidates. As per my list, more than 50% of the candidates of the Congress from the Mumbai, Thane, Pune belt are linked to real estate. That number goes up to over 70% when it comes to the NCP. It almost seems as if links with the builders are critical for parties like yours to give them tickets. You give people tickets if they are linked to the builder lobby.
You know, Rajdeep, the point I would like to make based on what I have heard of the submissions you have made on the statistics available is number one, if the assets of individuals who are elected in the Vidhan Sabha or for that matter even in Parliament, if that shows an extraordinary increase and there is no substantiated kind of reasoning behind it, and that would be a cause of serious concern. But I do believe that end of day the important point is that money, power or accumulated assets should not be in any way a qualifying criteria for a good person to enter politics. So when you are talking about right now about money part, link it to the criminal candidates.
No, I want to focus on money part today, sir. Mr. Jha, you didn't answer my question. More than 50% of your candidates are linked to real estate. More than 70% of NCP candidates linked to real estate. This only strengthens the belief that you have to in some way have a ready supply of cash to actually contest elections in a state like Maharashtra.
Well, you have lived in Mumbai before, Rajdeep. You will know that in Mumbai, I mean, real estate has actually gone skyrocketing through the roof. Now, I can't comment on individuals and what their asset holdings are. As long as it is legitimate and legal, I don't think anybody can question it. But that's a point I'm making, that because real estate is normally been seen suspiciously as having some element of cash transaction, one has always sniggered at people with those kind of assets. Therefore, I'm saying that transparency and disclosure has to be of the highest order. I know that people make affidavits in their election, the statements that they submit to the Election Commission, but these need to be very, very thoroughly scrutinized, because I will completely agree with you, irrespective of which political party, you cannot have anybody who's got a financial skullduggery in the past fighting for public office.
That's what you say on
completely contradictory.
Mr.
And the second point, I want to make, Rajdeep, one last point.
Yes.
Just one last point. The BJP spokesperson said criminality, 53% of their candidates have criminal records, and we have gone to the Election Commission because if you see the expenditure by the Bharatiya Janata Party as a party, it is obscene. I've never seen mainstream advertisements in the biggest newspapers are flooded with Mr. Modi and the BJP's ads. So the question is of a political party's culture as well. What are the source of funds? I mean, these things have to be investigated by the Election Commission.
Mr. Jha, before I widen it, I want Mr. Shelar to respond to that. Mr. Shelar, will you concede that in this election, the BJP has outspent the Congress also? This is one election where you have had more money than the Congress and even the NCP, which many thought was Maharashtra's richest party. You have the money. The amount of money you spent on advertising alone is possibly more than you've ever done in an election. Would you agree with that?
With all politeness, Rajdeep, may I make a point? Is there any crime if we do an advertisement as per the Election Commission's guideline? There is a IT department, there is a Election Commission's guideline, there is a set rules under which we all are governed. If we are doing and if we are showing our source to IT and Income Tax Commission and to the Election Commission, then what is wrong if we do an advertisement? If somebody can't do it, and that's why they are pointing to us, if we cross the limit or if we do an illegality, then you can question me. I think we are in the purview of the...
Mr. Modi's speech being telecast on prime time local channels.
No, that's another issue. That's another issue. That's another issue. I am now talking about money power in the election. YP Singh, you've been running a campaign against the money power of Maharashtra's politicians. You had a press conference a few years ago where you went public against Sharad Pawar. But the fact is your campaign has had a limited impact. Many of those candidates are still contesting elections. They don't seem to be going anywhere.
I think this is because they can do everything with impunity. In Maharashtra, there is an enormous nexus from the juniors right up to the seniors and ministers that you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. The propensity for corruption is enormous. People go to courts, but courts always look at suspicion with those who are filing cases. And here the violations are enormous. Like you have, Rajdeep, you have been talking about construction industry. Now construction in Mumbai is the one where there's the maximum illegality. We can have a 50, 60 floor building where there are no open spaces all around. These things don't come from free. You go to Delhi, you go anywhere. For a tall building, there will be lots of open spaces. So all these things which are happening, it's a big money spinner.
But do you have evidence? You see, do you have evidence? Do you have hard evidence to suggest, for example, the affidavits which have been declared? Ajit Pawar claims that he's worth only 28 crores. Now, people like you have made allegation that Ajit Pawar and the Pawars are worth thousands of crores. Is there any way to prove that? Is there any way to prove that these individuals have large reserves of cash?
Rajdeep, to prove all these things, you require investigation. Investigation is possible only when there is an FIR. FIR has to be registered on suspicion. Now we have Narayan Rane, he has made a 10-floor building staying right on the Juhu beach all alone. He was just a clerk in the income tax department earlier. How does he justify his assets? All these assets which have been created, they have been engineered by manipulations so as to convert black money into white. Now, unless until there is an FIR, unless until there is an investigation, there can't be any expose. It is like putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
And that is the reason why these people are doing everything with impunity.
Can I raise that with you, Tarlochan Shastri? I know that your group ADR looks at different states at different elections. Is Maharashtra any different? Is Maharashtra any worse than any other state? Is it worse than the kind of money we saw in Karnataka, the kind of money we saw in Andhra Pradesh? Is this now a national issue that in every election, candidates, you have more and more crorpatis who contest elections. Elections need big money.
Absolutely, there is no doubt about it, and Maharashtra is very similar to other states. I think we should appeal and make the people of Maharashtra think, should we vote for people who are using money power to win elections, whether it is directly bribing voters or whether it is spending money on hoardings, hosters, rallies, etc.
Right.
Because a person who is spending a lot of money to win an election is unlikely to do any good to the constituency once he is elected, because his energy is spent in recovering that investment. So once people stop voting for people who are spending extravagantly, the problem will go away. So this is what I would say, and this process of educating the voters, I think is an ongoing process, and I would like to thank NewsX, Rajdeep and others for raising it.
So what you are effectively saying is that it is tomorrow for the voters of Maharashtra to decide the kind of candidates they want. Do they want to vote for people simply on their money power, or do they want to vote for the best candidate who's available in an election? Sanjay Jha, Ashish Shelar, Tarlochan Shastri, YP Singh, appreciate your joining us on our top talking point here, and that question of money power. Where do we stand? My take. Inflation hits elections too. Not surprising then that the assets of MLAs in Maharashtra have increased manifold. As I said, inflation hits elections too. Not surprising then that the assets of MLAs in Maharashtra have increased manifold, and yet the number of super rich candidates in the state and their links with real estate suggest that the politician-builder nexus is intact. Breaking it will require a political will that no party has been able to summon. As the netas get richer, Maharashtra's politics may end up poorer. Okay, let's then turn to our next story, and it's coming from Visakhapatnam, a story that we've been tracking the aftermath of Cyclone Hudhud. Now there's chaos after the storm. Food riots broke out in Visakhapatnam city today. Hundreds of people scrambling for basic supplies, even looting relief trucks. What's worse, hoarders are cashing in on the tragedy, selling food materials for 3 to 4 times the cost. Our reporters send you this ground report.
A city devastated. Its people fighting tooth and nail for scraps of relief. The scenes on your screen of a ruthless police baton charge outside the Vizag Collectorate.
Fighting among themselves, police finally swinging into action much later after most of the relief material has been looted and taken away from here. You see what's happening now. People are being stopped and they are being made to return the material. A lot of them, of course, may be genuine people who require help, but the police for now at least not allowing this holding and this loot to continue.
The Hudhud aftermath hitting the people where it hurts most. Prices of essential commodities soaring. Water, milk, petrol, eggs, newspapers, prices doubling, tripling overnight.
In the heart of the Visakhapatnam city, this is the government's model of distributing aid. No discipline, extremely dangerous. It's a moving truck, people are running behind it. These are the kind of scenes which are taking place right at the heart of the city. It makes one wonder just what is happening in the hinterland. There is absolute chaos out here. As I was explaining, people have been kept devoid of basic essential services like water, food supply, milk. All of it is still being sold in black at rates much higher than the original ones.
Even for those who can afford it, cash withdrawal facilities remain limited.
Even as the city of Visakhapatnam seems to be slowly getting back on track with the stores actually opening up and goods available at the stores, the next big problem for the residents of Visakhapatnam is the availability of cash. With a city with over 18 lakh population, about 4-5 ATMs functional across the city is definitely too less. People have been standing in long lines since morning trying to get some cash. How long have you been looking for an ATM?
Since morning we've been looking for the ATMs and finally we got one and we had to stand for like an hour or something.
The administration lacking a planned approach to tackle the Hudhud aftermath. People mobbing relief officers, sometimes even looting supplies. The maddening velocity of Hudhud making scenes such as these an hourly norm in this ravaged city. With Jugal Purohit and Ratnika Sharma in Vizag, this is Bureau Report, Headlines Today.
So what does the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh have to say about those images coming in from Visakhapatnam? Chandrababu Naidu, Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, hopefully will be joining us. He's coming straight out of an emergency meeting. He joins us on News Today at 9.